the deep dive. Today, we're diving into the Kumbh Mela. It's this incredible gathering, millions of people all coming together for this huge pilgrimage tradition in Hinduism.
Yes.
It's known for its incredible scale of the rituals and the belief that bathing in these sacred rivers washes away sins and paves the way to liberation.
Exactly.
So what we're going to try to do today is figure out, well, what keeps this tradition so powerful even in the 21st century? And we've got a bunch of sources to help us uncover all of that, like a historical timeline, a deep dive from Wikipedia, and even a UNESCO piece, recognizing the Kumbh Mela as intangible cultural heritage. Plus, we got articles on the history, facts, the 2025 preparations in Prayagraj, security arrangements, and even the attractions for attendees.
That's a lot to unpack.
It really is.
Should be fun, though.
Yes, it really should. So I think a good place to start is that mythology, right?
Yeah.
Sort of the bedrock of the Kumbh Mela's origins.
Right, the Samudra Manthan.
The churning of the cosmic ocean, gods and demons battling it out for this nectar of immortality.
Amrita.
Amrita, yeah. Sounds like a Hollywood movie, right?
Totally. I mean, just the imagery alone is just fantastic.
Yeah, definitely. So, I mean, how does that nectar or that Amrita, how does it even come into being?
Well, it emerges from this, as you said, this cosmic tug of war between these gods and demons. And it's held in this divine pot, or a kumbh.
A kumbh, okay.
Yeah.
So the gods, naturally, are like, we want this for ourselves.
Of course.
But the demons are not going down without a fight.
Right, yeah.
So then Garuda comes in.
Garuda, yes.
Right.
The divine bird.
The divine bird swoops in,
Yeah.
helps the gods to protect that kumbh.
Right, and whisks it away
Mm-hmm.
in the celestial chase. And as he's flying away with the kumbh, a few drops of this Amrita happen to fall to Earth.
So the drops of Amrita.
Yes, and they land in 4 specific spots.
And those are the Kumbh Mela locations.
Exactly.
What are the odds,
Yeah.
right?
I mean, it's believed that these places were sanctified by that spilled Amrita.
Okay, so that's why millions go to bathe in the rivers at these sites, thinking it will cleanse them, help them achieve moksha.
Yeah, liberation from the cycle of death and rebirth.
Wow. It's just amazing how a story from so long ago is still so influential on the spiritual landscape of India.
It's really powerful.
It is.
And it's not just the story itself. The timing of the Kumbh Mela is also not random.
What do you mean?
It's all tied to these astrological calculations, mostly based on the positions of Jupiter, the Sun, and the Moon.
So it's like a cosmic dance.
Yeah.
Dictating when and where this festival takes place.
Yeah, that's a good way to put it. So each Kumbh Mela, it's celebrated when Jupiter enters a specific zodiac sign, and then also when the Sun and the Moon align in a certain way.
Right, so it all has to line up just right.
It does. Like, for instance, the Maha Kumbh Mela, which is considered like the most sacred one, happens every 144 years when Jupiter is in Aquarius and both the Sun and Moon are in Aries. So much has to align for that one to happen.
Right. Yeah, it's very precise.
Yeah. That's fascinating.
It is, isn't it?
It really is. I mean,
Yeah.
I think back to how a lot of ancient cultures, they looked at the universe as this like grand design with our lives here on Earth really linked to these celestial rhythms.
Yeah.
So it's really cool to see that embodied in the Kumbh Mela.
Yeah. And I think it's also important to remember that, when we're talking about this massive festival with millions of people, that didn't just appear overnight.
No, of course not.
It's been a journey, over centuries from these ancient bathing rituals, which were known as the Maha Kumbh Melas, to the massive organized gathering we see today.
Okay, so let's walk that path. How did we get from those early Maha Kumbh Melas to the Kumbh Mela we know today?
Well, I mean, think of them as the precursors, right?
Okay, yeah.
So they were annual events, Joan Velen, and over time, they just kind of gradually evolved, became more widely recognized, and then ultimately transformed into the Kumbh Mela. So what sorts of things pushed that transformation along?
Well, historical events played a huge role. The Indian Rebellion of 1857, for example.
Right, that's when we see that resurgence of Hindu identity, that cultural pride becoming so important.
Yeah, exactly. And I mean, I can see how the Kumbh Mela would become like an even more powerful symbol at that time. I mean, it was more than just a religious event, right? It was a symbol of resistance, of unity in the face of colonial rule.
Absolutely.
And during this time, we see the rise of these Hindu organizations and even support from the government, which further helped the Kumbh Mela gain popularity and become more structured, I guess, in the 20th century.
It's interesting how a spiritual gathering can get so tied up in these social and political movements.
Yeah, it happens all the time.
Yeah, it does.
I mean, this intricate timing and the evolving nature lead to the fact that there's actually not just one type of Kumbh Mela.
Oh, what do you mean?
There are 4 main types. There's the normal Kumbh Mela, which happens every 3 years.
Okay.
The Ard, or half, Kumbh Mela, every 6 years.
Okay.
And the Purna, or complete, Kumbh Mela, every 12 years.
And then Kumbh Mela, I'm guessing, the rarest is the Maha Kumbh Mela.
You got it.
Okay.
That one happens every 144 years.
Wow.
Yeah, and that one draws the largest crowds and has the most significant meaning to Hindus.
Okay. So each one is a little bit different.
Yeah. They each have their own frequency.
Right.
And their own astrological importance. But they all add to this, centuries-old tradition.
So we have these different types of Kumbh Melas, this rich mythology, this cosmic timing. And then Kumbh Mela, we can't forget about those akharas.
The warrior monks.
Yes, the warrior monks. These guys have had such an important role in managing the Kumbh Mela throughout history.
Absolutely. They represent different schools of thought within Hinduism.
Right, like Shaivism, focused on Shiva.
Yeah, and Vaishnavism, focused on Vishnu.
Yeah, you've got all these warrior monks handling the logistics, the policing, resolving all disputes.
Yeah, imagine that, right?
Yeah. Talk about strength and spirituality.
Yeah, they've got both. And, there are rivalries.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah.
Between the different akharas.
Yeah.
Okay, so these guys were essential for keeping things in order.
Right. But sometimes they would, have their conflicts.
Yeah.
And compete for, ritual primacy. And those disputes, well, sometimes they would escalate.
The violence.
Yeah, sometimes, yeah. And a lot of those, those clashes revolved around the order of bathing, which I guess was seen as a symbol of status.
Yeah, yeah.
Of spiritual authority.
So even in this religious gathering, we see those human dynamics of power and competition.
Yeah, I guess you could say that.
It adds a whole other layer to the Kumbh Mela.
It really does.
It really does. And it's a story that just keeps evolving.
Yeah, for sure.
I mean, now it's entered the modern era.
Yeah, the modern era.
So that's what we're going to explore next.
Okay.
I mean, we've gone from warrior monks to modern technology. The Kumbh Mela just seems to be this blend of old and new.
Yeah, it's pretty cool.
It is. It is. Expert. Okay, so we were talking about how the Kumbh Mela is blending ancient traditions with the modern world, which, I mean, honestly, when you think about the logistics, it's kind of mind-boggling, right?
It is, yeah.
Managing a gathering of this size in today's world.
Yeah, it really is it's a real feat of organization and coordination.
Definitely.
But I think one of the things that's really interesting is how it's become a global phenomenon.
Yeah, I mean, it's not just a local pilgrimage anymore.
Right.
It's an event that people all over the world know about.
Yeah, I mean, the imagery alone is just captivating.
Yeah.
And with, increased coverage in the media and just, this global interest in experiencing such a unique event, it makes sense that it's drawing people from all over.
And it's been formally recognized, too.
Oh, yeah.
Back in 2017, the Kumbh Mela was inscribed on UNESCO's representative list of untangible cultural heritage of humanity.
That's a big deal.
It is a big deal.
Yeah.
It puts it right up there with some of the most incredible cultural traditions that we have around the world.
Yeah, and it's not just recognition. I mean, the Kumbh Mela is really evolving to meet the realities of this modern gathering. Well, think about the infrastructure, the crowd management techniques, and the increasing focus on sustainability.
Yeah, it's like building a whole temporary city with housing, medical facilities, transportation.
Yeah.
All for millions of people.
And technology is a huge part of that.
How so?
Well, they're using things like GPS tracking and CCTV for safety and efficiency. Yeah. Mobile apps that give people information, help them navigate the festival.
So it's really embracing that digital age.
Yeah, it is.
What about the environmental impact?
Right. I mean, you've got millions of people. It's got to put a strain on resources.
Right.
Well, there is a growing awareness
about that boy.
Of that. of that responsibility. And recent Kumbh Melas have had sustainability initiatives.
Like what?
You know, waste management programs, and just trying to reduce the footprint of the whole festival.
It's good that they're addressing that.
Yeah.
It shows a commitment to protecting the environment.
Well, it's all about adapting while still honoring those traditions.
Definitely. You mentioned crowd management earlier.
Yeah.
I mean, how do they even begin to manage millions of people?
Well, it's a mix of technology and some of those traditional methods.
Okay, so what's the technology side?
Well, they use drones, for example, and they've got extensive CCTV networks so they can do real-time monitoring and crowd management.
So they basically got a bird's eye view of the whole thing.
Yeah.
And then that helps them to, like, well, spot bottlenecks, maybe some safety risks.
Exactly, yeah. And they use AI as well to analyze all the data they're getting, to identify any issues so they can be proactive about keeping people safe.
That's incredible.
Yeah. And then they also have, you know, more traditional things like barricades and designated entry and exit points and really clear signage.
Managing the flow
of all those people.
Yeah. And they even use simulations.
Oh, wow.
To predict how crowds will behave.
That's amazing.
Yeah.
So, yeah, they're really taking it seriously.
Yeah.
I mean, it's really clear that they're committed to not just the spiritual side, but the practical needs of this huge gathering.
They are. They also focus a lot on basic necessities, like sanitation and healthcare.
Yeah, that's got to be a huge challenge.
It is.
Yes.
But they've really stepped up their sanitation facilities, and they have a lot of medical camps, emergency teams all over the place.
Well, good to hear that.
Yeah. And for accommodation, they've built temporary housing, and the hospitality services have really grown too. I mean, it's like a pop-up city.
Yeah.
Dedicated to spirituality.
Yeah, you could say that. And to keep people informed, they've got, you know, announcement systems, information booths, helplines, and even social media for updates. Using
every tool possible to make it all run smoothly.
Yeah, and it takes a lot of collaboration with the government, with, you know, non-government agencies to make it work.
Yeah, it takes a whole village.
Yeah, you could say that.
So beyond all this logistics, let's talk about the Kumbh Mela's impact on Indian culture and society. It's not just a religious festival. It's a cultural phenomenon.
It really is.
So how does it shape the social and cultural landscape of India?
Well, one of the most important impacts is how it reinforces that sense of social cohesion and national identity.
Okay, what do you mean?
Well, it brings together Hindus from all different backgrounds, which really strengthens their bond and reaffirms that sense of belonging.
Like a giant family reunion.
Yeah, that's a good way to put it. And it's not just about Hindu identity either.
Yeah.
The Kumbh Mela attracts people from other faiths, other backgrounds, and enunciative. It really encourages a sense of inclusivity.
Promoting that interfaith dialogue.
Yeah, it's a testament to India's long tradition of religious pluralism.
Yeah, that's really powerful, especially in today's world.
Yeah, for sure. It shows that shared humanity can go beyond those religious and cultural differences.
And the Kumbh Mela isn't just about promoting that unity.
Right.
It helps shape social norms and practices.
Yeah.
How so?
Well, think about it. The Kumbh Mela has to focus on sanitation and hygiene, right?
Especially.
In a place.
I mean, those things can be tough.
Yeah.
And this massive gathering has really increased awareness and led to the promotion of sanitation and cleanliness.
That's great.
Yeah. It's a public health campaign.
Yeah.
And they also use it as a platform to spread information about health and wellness.
Smart.
Yeah. I mean, they've got a huge audience right there.
And they're also bringing in money.
Yeah, that's right. I mean, millions of pilgrims.
Yeah.
That's got to be a huge boost for the local economies.
Right. It creates jobs, supports businesses, generates revenue.
It's a spiritual and an economic boom.
Exactly, yeah. And it also contributes to the arts and literature.
Oh, yeah?
Yeah, I mean, a lot of artists, writers, filmmakers, they find inspiration in the Kumbh Mela.
So it's cultural wellspring.
Yeah, you could say that. And then with its global reach, it's also, you know, changing the world's perception of Indian spirituality.
Okay.
Attracting tourists and showcasing India's culture on a global stage.
It's like India's spiritual ambassador.
Yeah, you could say that.
It's really playing a key role
That's right.
in how the world sees India.
Yes.
All right, so we're back. We've talked about the history,
Yeah.
the spiritual side of the Kumbh Mela, and
Yeah.
even some of the challenges it faces
Yeah.
in the modern world.
Right.
But I'm really interested in this idea of how the festival has become
Yeah.
part of India's national identity.
Yeah, it's definitely more than just a religious event.
So much more. But how does a gathering of pilgrims, how does that become something as big as national identity?
Well, I think if you look at the values
Mm.
and the characteristics that are associated with India,
Mm.
you can see the connection.
Okay, yeah.
Like the sheer scale of the Kumbh Mela,
Mhm.
millions coming together relatively peacefully in this organized way, it really speaks to India's capacity for unity and diversity.
It really is like a microcosm of India, isn't it?
It is, yeah. You've got this melting pot of cultures, languages, beliefs, all coming together.
And
At
you
the end,
have
it's
always been
good.
proud of that inclusivity and tolerance.
Yeah, and the Kumbh Mela really embodies that unity and diversity.
It's such a powerful concept.
It is. And, you
Yeah.
know, the Kumbh Mela's roots, going back to those ancient myths we talked about, it really connects India to its past.
Yeah, it's a link between
It's-
the past and the present.
It is, and I think the visual aspect is huge, too.
Oh, yeah.
I mean, those images of millions bathing, the processions, the colors, the energy, those have become iconic representations of India.
That's like India's calling card.
Yeah.
Yeah. As the Kumbh Mela gains this global exposure, it's also been influenced, hasn't it?
It has. So it's kind of a two-way street.
Yeah. The Kumbh Mela shapes how the world sees India, and global influences shape the Kumbh Mela.
Right. And I think that brings up some ethical questions about how we approach cultural exchange and tourism.
Yeah, that's a great point. So what are some of the ethical considerations with the Kumbh Mela's global appeal?
Well, one of the big ones is this idea of cultural appropriation.
What do you mean?
Well, as it attracts more Western tourists, more media, there's a risk that the rituals and the traditions could be misinterpreted or even exploited.
Yeah. So how do we balance sharing this tradition with the world while also protecting it?
I think the idea of responsible tourism is really important here.
Okay. What does that mean?
Well, it means that tourists and media need to approach it with sensitivity, with respect.
Right. Yeah. It's not just a spectacle.
No, it's a living tradition.
Yeah. You have to engage with it on its own terms.
Exactly. And that leads us to another ethical point. How does all this tourism affect the local communities?
Right. We've talked about the economic boost, but there's always another side to that.
There is. You know, Kumbh Mela can be both good and bad.
In what ways?
Well, it does bring income, it supports businesses, but it also puts a strain on things.
Yeah, like infrastructure, resources.
Yeah, and the everyday life
Yeah.
of the people who live there.
And I'm guessing it brings overcrowding.
It does, and inflation, even displacement sometimes.
Wow.
Yeah.
So how do we mitigate that?
Well, I think sustainable tourism is really important. We have to focus on the well-being of both visitors and locals.
Make sure everyone benefits.
Yeah.
So, looking ahead, what's next for the Kumbh Mela? How does this tradition keep going in a world that's changing so fast?
That's a great question.
What trends do you see? What challenges?
Well, I think a big one is finding that balance between tradition and modernity.
Right. Because as technology advances, there's going to be pressure to use all those new tools.
Yeah, and that's where it becomes a question of how to keep the essence, the soul of the tradition, while embracing the new possibilities.
And what about those environmental concerns we talked about?
Yeah. The Kumbh Mela really needs to focus on sustainability, on minimizing its impact.
So it's not just about celebrating the rivers, it's about actively protecting them.
Exactly. And then there's just the issue of its growing popularity.
Yeah, with more and more people. It's going to be a challenge to manage.
Yeah, managing that is going to require some real creative thinking. But I am optimistic.
Oh, yeah.
The Kumbh Mela will keep going. It's adapted for centuries. It's resilient.
Yeah. It's like a river itself, isn't it? Always flowing, changing, but always powerful.
That's a great way to put it. And I think as the world becomes more interconnected, the Kumbh Mela's message, that message of unity and tolerance, is only going to resonate more.
It really is a powerful tradition.
It is. And it reminds us that even in all the chaos, there's a deeper reality, something that connects us all.
So, we've come to the end of our deep dive into the Kumbh Mela We've looked at ancient myths, modern technology, the stories of the
Yeah.
pilgrims, the span and the culture of India. It's been a fascinating journey.
It has.
And as we leave you today, Brashnav, we want to leave you with this thought. How does the Kumbh Mela, this blend of our old and new, old myth Mela way, reflect our own search for meaning? It's a question for all of us. And maybe at Kumbh Mela, through exploring the Kumbh Mela, we can see how universal that search is. That across cultures and time, Kumbh Melas, we've always looked for something bigger than ourselves. We've looked for meaning, for Kumbh Mela, and a sense of belonging. So thank you for joining us on this deep dive. Keep those brains curious, those hearts open, and those minds ready to explore.